We're talking about voice AI. Voice AI is one of those technologies that's filled with a lot of hype. Some people think that it's clunky, that it's slow, it doesn't really work in the real world. Theory is that it will replace anybody that talks. Voice AI has crossed the threshold. It's crossed that threshold from being a stumbling toddler working its way through conversations to something that can, if used correctly, deliver good benefits to a dealership. That if you're not using voice AI today, you need to be thinking about how and when and what you've got to do to get that working. Because if you don't do it, like all these things, somebody else will. Welcome to Dealer Tech Talk, where we explore how technology is revolutionising car, motorhome and leisure dealerships around the UK. I'm Simon Verona and I'm your host. This podcast is sponsored by DMS Navigator, the dealer management system that helps you become more efficient and more profitable, delivering better customer service, and Miles Companion, the app that helps you keep connected with your customers and deliver better lifetime value for the customer and the dealership. Today, we're talking about AI, specifically voice AI, and discuss what it is, why it matters, should you be using it. Voice AI is one of those technologies that's filled with a lot of hype, just like a lot of AI technology, where the promise of what could be happening isn't really being delivered today. Some people think that it's clunky, that it's slow, it doesn't give good responses, it doesn't really work in the real world. And at the other extreme, the theory is that it will replace anybody that talks, from your receptionist, from your sales teams, to your customer service advisors. And as usual, the truth is probably somewhere in between today, and will probably develop over the next few years. What's changed recently, and why this episode matters, is that voice AI has crossed the threshold. It's crossed that threshold from being a stumbling toddler working its way through conversations to something that can, if used correctly, deliver good benefits to a dealership and to their customers. So first of all, what is voice AI? I guess we're used to perhaps using voice AI in a very, very limited form with things like Siri, for example, where you can ask it a question and it will give you an answer by voice. But that's not really voice AI. It's not conversational. It's quite simple in how it talks, and the technology is very much more in getting the information for you. Proper voice AI is all about having a conversation, having a goal. What do you actually want to do? And having a conversation with somebody to get to that goal. Every conversation will be different, and it has to be able to deal with all sorts of scenarios that may happen in a genuine conversation. So, for example, between a dealership and a customer. Key point here is it's not about following a rigid script. It's not about just following it from A to Z. It has to be able to work its way around in a normal way, in normal conversation, to get the results that you actually need. Today, voice AI is best used where you are in a systemized, high volume, repeatable scenario. So some great examples of where voice AI could be deployed successfully today are things like telephone bookings for service. Here you have a conversation with a consumer, but that conversation has very, very structured elements and a very highly structured outcome. Something that an AI can work through in its goals, that it knows it needs to get the customer details, the vehicle details, what you need to have done, when you want to do it, and then somehow deliver that booking to the systems in the dealership. That's quite easy. That's quite easy today, I think, for that to be done. And we're seeing systems that are delivering that today. The key thing, though, with voice AI is to think about when you're deploying it, and that it is not something that you run over and above everything in the dealership. It has to be integrated with existing dealer processes. It needs to be integrated with dealer systems, and it needs to be the process. And it's augmented. It's part of that human computer AI team. You can almost think of your voice AI as being an extra telephone receptionist that has maybe lower skills than the human agents, but it can do that job and work alongside the human agent. And that's kind of an interesting point about where does voice AI work well and where it doesn't. As I've already said, where you've got a systemized outcome and you've got a process you need to follow to get to somewhere, AI is really good at. But forget about using AI today where you want an emotional response or where you don't have a specific goal in mind. AI is not very good at aimlessly pondering along. And if customer needs empathy or sympathy or anything like that, that's not really where AI is really good at today. It's pretty poor at it. And for most AI systems, it's really, really important that it knows its own limits, that it understands where it can't handle and where it's best handing over to a human operative. The good thing about it, of course, is that voice AI can then take the heavy lifting of those very straightforward or more straightforward calls. And that leaves the humans to be able to be working more uninterrupted, to be dealing with the task that the AI can't deal with, where it can require emotion or require more in-depth decision making or thought processes. That's where the humans can go very well in that. But most importantly, AI is not a silver bullet. It doesn't fix a process. If you put an AI, any AI, but particularly voice AI, into a process that doesn't work today, all you'll do is make it not work even more. It'll amplify and multiply that up. It doesn't fix a process. It's got to be part of an existing process and just doing what you do today, but using AI technology to do that. And that kind of comes into an area where it needs to be able to do that, the same kind of information that a human would need. So when a customer is ringing you, the first thing that most of our humans will do, let's take service advisors, is they will look that customer up on the computer system. The AI needs to be able to do that exactly the same way. It needs to be integrated with your dealer management system, for example, so that it can look customer information up, that it can find out what car they're driving, so that it can then find, what availability you've got in the diary, and then book that customer in and create that booking in the DMS system. It's got to be able to do that. If it's not doing that, then all you're doing is creating duplication for yourself, where the AI is doing a task and then a human's got to sweep up behind it doing the same task again. And that will not add to the business. It will actually make it worse. Generally, where AI works, and voice AI particularly works, is where you're thinking about systems and processes and not about tools, and that the tools that you're employing become part of those processes. I know a lot about that. We've deployed both ordinary AI chat, but also voice AI chat into our own business. So we have voice AI now taking, for example, customer help desk calls in our main businesses. Getting there has been a challenge. It's thrown up lots of challenges we didn't expect, but it can do it, and it is doing it today, and we're seeing the benefits of that. The benefits are that it can take lots of calls at once. There's no call queuing. It can take calls 24/7. There's no concept of opening times. It's interfaced with our ticketing system in our case, so it can create tickets. It leaves our human operatives more focused. They can work the tickets the AI is taking without having to be interrupted to actually take those tickets all the time. They can use their skills much more where the AI can't do that. And in fact, in our case, our voice AI works alongside our internal chat AI, where a voice AI ticket is put into the chat AI and then transfers an answer back where it can do, which again leaves the humans to do the ones where the AI really can't do that. And you can see that being deployed in the future in dealerships, where AI is being used through a business process at different points, and the humans are used to supplement and augment that and provide the skill set that the AI doesn't have. And the benefits are straightforward. I think, if you think of a service reception, you think at the 9 o'clock in the morning when customers are booking in or ringing in to book in, worst time to call. You've got people queuing at reception. The phones are ringing. The customers are not getting their answers. They're getting asked to ring back. AI can take those calls. It can answer the telephone. It can book people in for servicing. It could even do things quite easily where it can tell customers if their car is ready and answer rudimentary questions like that. And it'll do that during the day. It'll do it out of hours. If somebody wants to ring at 10 o'clock at night and book their car in for service, the AI is more than happy to do that. It doesn't sleep. And that gives much, much higher customer satisfaction, and also means you haven't got a lot of calls backs to do in the morning. But looking ahead, so far we've talked about reactive and we've talked about very systemized calls that AI can do. That clearly is going to develop as time goes forwards. We can see quite clearly that it's not going to be too long. In fact, we're starting to see those systems start to come where the AI can start making outbound telephone calls. And then we're into the realms of all sorts of things. We could have AI ringing our customers back to tell them their car's ready, or that it's been a vehicle health check and they need some work authorising, that your car is due a service or an MOT. Do they want to book in? The future becomes quite extensive. When that future comes, the way AI is developing, I think it's probably sooner than any of us would care to think where that starts to become successful. And I think the biggest challenge is not the AI. I think it comes down to the human's acceptance of that AI as we're going through. Again, as we've seen on our help desk, there are people out there that do not want to talk to a computer, do not want to talk to an AI. We have to have the AI identify itself as an AI. That's fair and quite correct. So the person knows it's not talking to a human. And even though that AI can have a very human-like conversation and can do the tickets and do the calls very, very well, you find that quite often the human at the other end is not quite so accepting of actually talking to that. And that's natural. That will change. I think as AI becomes much more pervasive and more common across a lot of things, people will start to be more accepting of that and recognize the value of being able to talk to an AI about having calls on their terms when they want to deal with that, and being quite structured about that. But the key takeaway today is that if you're not using voice AI today, you need to be thinking about how and when and what you've got to do to get that working. Because if you don't do it, like all these things, somebody else will, and the consumer will always move to the interactive businesses that make it easy for them to work with. And the real benefit of the AI is not the AI itself, it's the integration with all your processes and making that right. And you have to think of the AI agent as if it was an employee. It has a cost of running, generally lower than a human cost, but it still has a cost. It has a workload that it needs to do. You need to see that ROI. It needs to be integrated with your processes. It needs to be integrated with your systems. It needs to be able to do that correctly. Hopefully that's given you a good view of where AI is going. There are loads of systems out there available today, but don't assume that everyone will work in your business. They have different capabilities. They cannot be used standalone. Voice AI has to be integrated to work well. So you need to make sure you're considering that when you're moving forwards on those. And thanks for listening to the Dealer Tech Talk podcast today. Like a lot of our podcasts, we have some guides available at www.dealertechtalk.uk/guides. Feel free to go and download any of those on a whole number of subjects, including this one. Dealer Tech Talk is sponsored by DMS Navigator on Miles Companion. Thanks for joining us today. Until next time.